Today I am showing off my brand new AT-AT, except I didn't design this. This was made by Edge of Bricks, and it is the best AT-AT I have ever seen, and I am very proud to have it in my collection.
Echo Station 3TA.
We have spotted Imperial walkers.
By the way, I should mention, I see no financial gain from this AT-AT. This is all Edge of Bricks build. I do not get a cut of any of his sales. I just found this to be the best AT-AT and I wanted to showcase it. And I didn't think I could do a better job, so I just went ahead and built the best version I could of the scale that I'm aiming for. First off, you'll see that there is a light inside and there's a simple switch on top of this build that is seamlessly built into the design. And I love this opening hatch as it makes it a very playable set. The inside of this AT-AT is fantastic. There's 2 stories in the middle section. You can line up your troopers and have them displayed in the bottom, but there's also seats up top, and this actually moves out so you can easily get access to the troopers because behind them, the light mechanic sits behind there and you can't really interact on the top, but that's fine with me because it's such a small space anyways. I don't want to be fiddling with my fingers in there, and I think it's a really good use of the space with a really cool play function of having a light. This is a ginormous build and it is very awkward to move around as you expect, but I like to pick it up underneath right here, and we're going to show off the back side of this and the storage area. There's a great engine up here, just like we see in the UCS version. And then I also have some speeder bikes in here, and I also fit an E-Web cannon to go up there as well. And I find all this space just awesome in the back, and it's a really good feature of this playset. If we come around to this side of the AT-AT, this is where I modified this hatch to have a rappel line, so that way you can have your troopers descending down from this rappel line, and they can hold on just like that. And this is a really simple build. It's just a few Technic pieces that allows you to easily scroll this with your finger and allow the troopers to go up and down. And this is just a simple modification I added on. This is 99% Edge of Bricks builds. I just added a few little details that made it perfect for me, and I'm really happy with how this fits in. If we move this around to the front end, this is where we probably lose the most space because of just the mechanism that holds the head up, and we don't get a second story here in the front of the build, but I find this to be completely acceptable and fine. I also modified and added 2 seats on each side because it is a tight space, but I was able to fit 2 seats, so that way we have 4 more seats in total added to the front. I really love the sand blue seats. I bought a few extra when I went on Pick-a-Brick. Lastly, for the interior, we have the cockpit. It is snug, but it's not nearly as snug as the official Playscale set from Lego that allows you to put the general at the back of the cockpit, and he is standing with the binoculars that are held on by a robotic arm. Just really good play setup. You'll notice that the paneling on the exterior of this AT-AT is just amazing. And I think Edge of Bricks just knocks it out of the park with just the right amount of studs being displayed around the model, but not too many and not too little to where it's completely studless. And I just love the exterior, how tight these panels are, all the angles. He really knocked it out of the park with this design. There's very limited range of the legs and how they can be positioned. There's only 2 positions that Edge of Bricks suggests, and there's good reason for that. There's just so much weight up here that if you allow the legs to have more than 2 points of articulation, it would just completely collapse if you happen to go past the second point of articulation. So he was very smart in the way he built it, but it does limit you with how you can set this thing up and move the legs. The underside of this AT-AT is just so detail packed. He really does put a ton of detail around the entire MOC, and even in areas that a lot of times designers like myself would skip over. Something that's not seen, the bottom of ships, a lot of times I just don't detail those as much. However, since this is such a 3D all-encompassing vehicle that is on the ground, it interacts with the troops on the ground, he did a fantastic job of putting the details that are necessary underneath this AT-AT, and it looks like just a mechanical monstrosity that we see in the films. Speaking of the monstrosity that we see in the films, this AT-AT is obviously huge on screen, and I've said in my previous video about scale that I expect larger ships to scale down with Playscale size. That's my UCS Playscale sizing. Go watch that video. If I were to go by that scale, if I were to stay true to what I said in that video, this should not be so close to 1/45th scale, because this is currently at 1/50th scale. This would probably fall in line with my Millennium Falcon at 1/78th. However, I didn't do that, and I think this is the perfect build for this because it's just way too small at 1/78th scale, because this needs to be a monstrosity because it's so ground-based. And that's my theory. I think that anything that's super ground-based that we see in relation to the ground and troops, it can't go into my UCS Playscale model because it's just not going to look right. My second theory on why I had to go larger with this is I think in the films and what we see as movie accurate, and that's what I'm going for, this is supposed to be 75 feet tall, around 75 feet tall in the films. I think it is way larger than that. After looking at some of the footage a little more closely, you could say that some of the scenes that the AT-AT is in fact 75 feet tall, but the fact remains that the cinematographers did a really good job at making it feel large and feel impressive, and shrinking something down that's known for that, known for those qualities, is just hard to do, and I can't manage to do it in Lego and it feel like it's correct. So that's why it's making an exception with my UCS Playscale. For those of you out there saying, hey, you're just making this up as you go, yeah, I kind of am, and I'm kind of figuring things out, and I'm figuring out that something like the AT-AT just can't fit into my UCS Playscale. I'm going to try to shrink things as much as I can in the future, but this one just doesn't work. And this is really going to come in handy when I make a snow speeder in the future, which I plan to do, because I need that snow speeder to go in between the legs and get crushed by an AT-AT. And this 18 inches tall AT-AT works much better than the 13 inches tall Playscale one. Now, I did shrink mine by about ½ inch by removing 1 brick height from each of the leg sections. I wouldn't suggest this for anybody else. And even in this case, it is still a monstrosity. This thing uses so many pieces. It is nearly 5,000 pieces. It is huge. It is way bigger than my Millennium Falcon, which I'll get that out here in a second. So here's my Falcon next to the AT-AT. As you can see, the AT-AT is outsizing it, but they're relatively similar, almost the same length. And this Millennium Falcon is 1/78th scale, and the AT-AT is around 1/50th. And I think this works well. It looks believable. We never see the Millennium Falcon and an AT-AT in frame, but I really needed the AT-AT to be this kind of monstrosity of a moving building. And as I'm building out my Imperial ships, it is good to see how they size up next to each other. Technically, I think the Imperial shuttle should be almost the height of an AT-AT if you're going by the numbers on the page, but again, I feel like this is okay. It holds 6 troopers in the back and 2 pilots. This thing could easily fit, I think, over 20. I don't know, I haven't tested that limit. I don't want to buy that many troopers. And we can see the TIE Fighter next to this. This feels good. I feel like this is accurate. Seeing a TIE Fighter fly by this thing, I like the distinction in size between these two. This doesn't feel too oversized. This doesn't feel too oversized. I think this feels right for what I'm going for with my MOCs. Lastly, here is an X-Wing next to the AT-AT. I think this works really well. If this was attacking the AT-AT, I feel like this is a good proportionate size. And in the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One, we have X-Wings, but actually we do not have an AT-AT. It's a different version of the AT-AT that I think is 100 feet tall. It's very similar, but it is a larger version of the AT-AT. So I think this really works well. This is kind of similar in proportion, but the X-Wing is not outsizing the AT-AT. And that was my problem with the Playscale version of this AT-AT. It just felt way too small.
One more pass. Cable detached.
Edge of Bricks does have an amazing speeder bike that you could definitely build, and he includes it in this build. However, it was too big for me because I like to make everything 1/45th scale, especially for the really small things. And I made a brand new speeder bike that is available for free. And by the way, Edge of Bricks, he has his free as well if you want to build his. But I wanted to make mine a little smaller, and I can fit 2 inside the back. I could probably fit 4 if I made a rack for stacking them. But I really want to make something that is accurate. So this really comes in at around 1/45th scale, and I think it's around 3 inches long, and it really lets the snow trooper or the scout trooper lean forward on the bike and be a really proper representation of this speeder bike in Lego form. It is only held on by 1 stud, but it is this kind of open stud that allows it to be a little bit stronger than a typical 1 stud connection. And the trooper sits right here on these 2 studs with the bottom of their feet, and they sit forward and they don't latch onto the handles. I get a little annoyed by speeder bikes that hold the trooper in place by the handles because when you pull them off, it makes the bike want to rip apart. But with this studded approach, it allows you to easily hold onto the bike and set it down without ripping it apart. It does fall apart pretty easily if you drop it, but it is such a simple build. It's only a few pieces, and it is free up on my Rebrickable page. So I have no plans of building my own version of the AT-AT because I just don't think I can beat what Edge of Bricks has made here. This thing is not cheap, it's not easy to build, but that is to be expected with something that's nearly 5,000 pieces. So here are all the pieces that I will use for the new AT-AT. I still have my old one assembled, but it is going to be deconstructed and put into the new one. I have a bunch of my own parts right here. I have pick-a-brick order over here, a very large bricklink, and another bricklink, and another smaller bricklink order. So it is almost 5,000 bricks right here, and this is going to be quite a build. You absolutely have to use pick-a-brick because there are some pieces that are way cheaper on pick-a-brick, and it's worth it because you're going to be utilizing so many that you're going to pull from pick-a-brick, the ones that are available. For example, these macaroni tiles that go around the legs and are used in so many other spots, they're not worth getting on Bricklink. You want to get them on pick-a-brick. So just ordering the pieces was a convoluted mess. That's no fault of Edge of Bricks. It's just the way it is and what we have access to at the moment. I wish there was easier ways of getting bricks, but you're looking at upwards of $500, maybe even $600 building from scratch. This is really for the person who has a lot of bricks in their collection. They can save and cut costs that way. And again, it is a bear, kind of figuring out all the inventory, and you really got to be really well organized, which I'm not, and that's why it took me longer to do. But again, very much worth it. This beats the UCS AT-AT in my opinion. I think it's better in almost every regard. I don't even want something that large. This fits all of my needs in the scale that I like. It is perfect. I fully endorse Edge of Bricks build. It is so intricately built, so strong in so many different ways, and I learned a lot just seeing how he managed to make things strong and reinforce things because it is so technical to build something like this. By the way, I should mention that when I was doing my research for the AT-AT build, I did find a designer who did a really fantastic job. I can't pronounce his name. It starts with an R. I'll pop it up on screen, but this one has been built by a ton of people. It's been featured on other YouTube videos. If you are really looking for a great AT-AT build, but you don't have the cash to sink into something like this, you should definitely highly consider this builder because I was really impressed by it. I think Edge of Bricks just goes a little bit farther. He puts in the details and really enlarges it in ways that makes it a little more accurate. The feet are a little bigger, and I just love the cockpit. There's just so many things that I really loved about this build. It really shows off in the price and what you're going to be paying for. So it is something I decided to splurge and sink some of the design money I've made into another designer and showcase their work. And I'm really happy with what I have, but I understand that a lot of people aren't going to touch this because it is just so expensive and quite an undertaking with the pieces. However, there are alternate solutions out there and other designers who do fantastic work. Speaking of which, I may feature other designers in the future. It really depends. I'm trying to build every ship in Star Wars that I find awesome, which is usually original trilogy. Maybe I'll get around to the prequels. I know a lot of you guys are asking. But if I find a ship that I think has already been created perfectly in a scale that I like, I might just build that designer and feature it on my channel. Most of the time, I'm gonna try to build my own because a lot of people aren't hitting the smaller scale that I'm trying to go for. But whenever I encounter something that I say, I don't think I can beat that, then I'm gonna feature that designer. I'm not taking requests. I'm going to do this anonymously because I don't want it to be something that people reach out to me for. It's going to be something that I do on my own, I research, it's going to be my honest opinion. And again, Edgebricks has no idea that I've made this video, and I want it to be just something that I can give back to the community because Edgebricks is a really great designer that you guys should go look into yourself as well.